What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with another castable fly today. So, a couple new things in this video. The first thing is I've never done a giveaway. I just kind of realized I've been uploading these videos for so long and I've been having a great time doing it, whether it gets 7 views or 7,000. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to keep pumping these out. But I've never done a giveaway. And so I thought what would be fun is to do my first giveaway. I was thinking of a creative way to do this, so I went to the good old ChatGPT and I typed in, AI, whatever, whoever's on the other side of the computer, design me a super cool, colorful fly using bucktail. I might have said streamer, I don't know what I said, using bucktail. And it came up with this image that you're looking at right now. Now, I knew it was going to be a little bit tricky to get the colors exactly right, and the design was a little off in my opinion, so I did it a little bit different, but I tried to match as much of the colors, and the eyes were really tricky to match too. I ended up ordering some of these. These are just little stick-on eyes. I ended up just ordering a color that I thought looked enough like the ones in the picture, but to get this fly in your box. This is a castable fly. I have a 9mm slotted tungsten bead hiding under this bucktail. It weighs about 3/16 of an inch. With the hook and the hair and stuff, it'll weigh a little bit more than that. All you gotta do is subscribe to this channel right now in one of these corners, like the video, drop a comment below. Whether I get 2 comments or 20, doesn't matter. I'm going to randomly pick someone. I'm going to end up having you go to my the home page, in the bio, my email's sitting right there, and I'm going to get this fly to you. Wherever you live, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to send this out. So, like and subscribe, drop a comment below. I'm going to randomly pick this maybe, I don't know, in the next week. You got to have a timetable on it. Super cool colors. Yellow, chartreuse, a little bit of baby blue, a little bit of dark blue, and then some flame orange. It's kind of like a reddish orange in my opinion, just right on top and just a little bit on the bottom. Super cool eyes. I made the black nose, but I ended up putting a little bit of UV resin on there just to make it a little more durable. These eyes are probably going to fall off pretty quick. And then it had a little bit of a black coming in, so I put a little bit of permanent marker on there. I could have added a little bit more permanent marker, but I ended up just calling it quits. A nice 6-inch hollow tide streamer. Let's tie it up. Alright, so I've got my first stack ready to go. I took my first stack and I actually split it in 2, just because this shank is a little bit thinner than what my hook is going to be. So I thought, I always get a little nervous if you put too many materials on the shank of the hook. They really just want to spin with it, and you have to put so much pressure on it to spin it around and get it tight that you can just split them in half and you're usually pretty good to go. So I'm just gonna really make this about as short as I can get it. And I'm just gonna try and catch all of these materials around. I might even pull it around a little bit more, and I'm just gonna kind of make sure you can see all these materials are tight down there, and I'm just gonna spin them. They're not gonna want to spin at all because they're right by my shank, and you can see this is not a lot of material at all because I've split it into 2. And so splitting that, and I'm even gonna lose a couple of these little blue hairs because they just didn't want to be long enough for the fly that it designed me. So I'm just gonna kind of get these around as much as I can. And these yellow ones are about as long as they can get, so I'll just kind of spin those. And again, even these ones want to spin. So now I've still got plenty of room for my second stack, and it's just going to blend together anyway. All of these fibers are going to blend together. They're all cut the same length, So you're not going to notice any difference. Maybe, what is that, a 1/10 of an inch? You're not going to notice much. I've got my next stack, and I'm just going to put it where my little black, I don't know if I mentioned that, I put a little black mark where I wanted my thread to end, just so I could know where to put it on my hook. I have to be careful where I put all this material because I've only got a certain amount of length on this shank to get it pretty secured down. I want to make sure it's fairly secure. You know, I don't have to worry too much because there's no hook on the back of this, but I do want to make sure that it doesn't, slip off on you, really, because I'm giving this away. I really just want to make sure that this is going to stay where I want it to. Alright, so now I'm going to get down that shank, and I'm just going to use I think this is 210 white. This is 210 UTC white, just because I feel like it sticks down a little bit better than the monofilament, and I'll end up using mono on my last little part of this fly. So I'm just going to make sure that I kind of figure this out. I'm going to split this hair. The hair isn't really what you have to worry about. I'm going to push it back a little bit just so I don't hit a little bump in my bead. And I'm just going to wrap that down just a little bit. You can just see it's just wrapped down just a little bit. And I'm going to put down some of this super glue. And I'm going to glue this shank to the bead. So I'm going to get this whip finished off, and I'm going to get my first stack ready. So this first stack on my shank is going to be not quite as long as that yellow hair. I don't want it to go quite as far, so I'm going to trim off just a little bit of this. But this is going to have a lot of chartreuse in it, and I have a lot of room to work with, but I just have to be careful with that bead. So I'm just going to trim off quite a bit of this. And actually my second stack is going to be almost as long as this one, just because I can't wrap a ton around this bead. So I'm just going to put, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch on there. And I'm just going to kind of get it around and stack it, and it's going to have some flare in it, which is just fine, because this is pretty straight hair. This isn't like super wavy stuff. This has a lot of trapped air in it, and it's pretty straight. And so anyone who has tied with a lot of deer hair, you know that what kind of hair I'm using. I'm not going to spin it too much onto the bottom of this shank. I'm just going to get it kind of wrapped around and flare this out. But you can see how straight some of that hair is, or most of the hair is. You can see how straight it is, and I can get a little bit of flare out of there. And I'm just going to wrap this down and get a little bit of tension on that hook. But again, I can't go too far back because those hairs have nowhere to go. And even I wrap a couple off, I'm going to trim these off, and we're going to get this spun around. So I'm going to grab my push tool. I'll get this pushed around. I'm going to get that around my bead as much as I can. Some of these hairs aren't going to want to go, so I'm just going to kind of tell them which side of this bead to go on, and that way I can hold this back and kind of get my thread on the other side. Then I can build up my little cone, and if I lose a little hair like that, I should have taken it out before anyway. So I'll just build up a little cone here, and I'll get my second stack down. So I've got this at about a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to just put in a little bit of this Krystal flash that's peacock. I think it's peacock. I'm just going to put it in. This is not all about the same length. It's a little tapered. I just grabbed probably about, I don't know, a half a dozen of these fibers. I grabbed like 2 of them and I just cut them into about thirds, and I barely just put those on my thread, but I'm just gonna put those in. I just want them sitting on top of my fly, so I'm just gonna wrap those in nice and tight, and I'll come back down here. I'm gonna put a little super glue, and I'm gonna get my second stack of bucktail ready to go. So I'm gonna put this down, and this is gonna be pretty long. I guess I have a little bit left I can work with. Maybe I'll come down just past my Krystal flash. I'm just gonna pick out all that short stuff. I'm gonna put this down, not quite where that second stack goes. There's a couple longer ones in there, so I'll put those down. I'm gonna trim this off, but I wanna leave enough where it's gonna leave this last little bit before I put my orange down. I want to make sure that I've got enough to do kind of a reverse bulkhead. And if you don't know what that is, I'm going to put down some fibers on my left, your right. I'm going to put down some fibers to flare them out, to add some shoulders to the back of this bait. Not the back, but the middle of this bait. That's kind of what my goal is. You want to make this bait a little bit bulkier, or I guess taller than what it would be. And with these fibers here, it's going to allow this bait to appear bigger than what it normally would. So I can kind of flare out these hairs, because this is not a lot of hair. You can see through this hair pretty easily. This is not a huge stack of deer hair. This is a pretty minimal amount of hair that I'm spinning around this shank, and it actually feels refreshing to kind of do that. So I'm going to get these wraps down, make sure they're fairly secure. If I pull really tight and they don't spin, that usually means I'm pretty much good to go. I'm going to get them right back there. I'm going to push these back onto the other fibers, get them pushed past my bead, and then you can just make it so. Push this one back. I just want to use my finger to get all these fibers back. Then I can bring my thread up, and you can see I have plenty of room for my last little bit of fun, my eyes, and those last 2 stacks of hair, because I just don't want to run out of room with what I need to do. So I'm going to get this wrapped on, and I don't need to necessarily push these way back. So this last little bit is the orange flame, and what I'm going to do is, in the picture it looked like that orange flame went pretty much the full length. I'm not going to go quite that far, just because, you know, I don't know if I don't trust AI or what, but I don't want it to go the whole way. I'm going to just tie this in normally, and I'm going to tie it in. There's a ton of trapped air in here, and so I really have to be careful with how tight I make these wraps. If I really ream down on this right now, it is going to just absolutely flare out of control. But I can just wrap it kind of lightly at first and just kind of wrap over the hairs just a little bit, just to make them not flare as much as I want. If I would have really rained down, those things would be pretty much at a 90-degree angle. I might lose a couple of those hairs, which is totally fine because I do not want these hairs to get too unruly. I also don't want them to get completely off of my top because I'm just putting these on the top of my bait, and so I don't want them spinning around my shank. But any of these hairs that kind of stay off the course, I can end up just trimming them. So I just want those right on the top. You can see it's kind of uneven a little bit, but when I put this on the bottom, now these ones on the bottom are just, the hair is a lot different, and so I'm just going to trim this up. It's a lot thinner. I just wanted this to be a little bit less noticeable, and there's going to be almost no flare in it. And I'm just going to put this right on the bottom, and I'm just going to put that there. Now I'm just going to wrap these hairs off, and I'm just going to put a little bit of super glue down. I'm going to kind of trim this up, and then I'm going to put down my 140 black, and I'm going to build this head up a little bit. Alright, so I figured with the giveaway, I want to show you how I'm making this bait pretty consistently, and even if the video is a little bit long, I'm going to build this with 140 UTC black. I'm just going to start it right at the eye, and I'm just going to wrap up just to make sure that that thread is down. I'm going to get this trimmed off. Again, I have a lot of super glue down there, so I'm going to make sure that I'm using my scissors that aren't super expensive. I'm going to just wrap off all of this orange. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the orange. That's really what I don't want in my fly. If it's going to have any of that black nose in it. You could use 210 here. It would probably be a little bit quicker, but you have to be a little more careful with how many wraps that you use because it's just going to bulk up a little bit faster. With this 140, I can kind of build up a little bit of a head here and keep some lighter tension on this and kind of wrap down and back and just build up a little bit of that head. Then I'm going to come here and I'm just going to whip finish. I'm going to kind of whip finish up into my head because I don't want to crowd that eye too much. So just whip finish up there. It slid down a little, which is why I went up. So I'm going to get that down. Before I put my eyes down, I'm going to grab my little black marker. There was just a little bit of a black fade on that image, and I just want to try and get a little bit of that black fade in there. This is kind of a tough thing to do because that AI imaging makes it just absolutely perfect. So I'm just going to kind of color this up. I'm going to put my eyes down, and if I want to put more of that black down, then I can end up doing that. I really don't need to put any of this black on my black thread just because it's, I already did what I wanted it to do. These eyes that I've got, I had a really hard time finding the eyes for this fly. And so these are 8mm cool eyes in orange, and they're stick-on eyes. And so I've never really used stick-on eyes before. I'm going to put a little bit of gel super glue on here, and I'm just going to put these eyes on. You have to be a little bit more careful with these eyes as I'm holding them in my hand, just because they're not quite as stiff as, your traditional 3D eye. But I do want, with that image, I'm looking at this image as I go, I do want some of that black to be present on that nose. And so that's the only thing I really am worried about. These are the closest eyes I could get. The eyes on the image look 3D, but this is as good as I could get, because AI doesn't care where you get your eyes from. It just cares about the image that it generates. So I'm going to get another one, and it might have been a little bit bigger. I suppose you could maybe go a little bit bigger to 10 mil. I prefer bigger eyes. I would have definitely gone 10 mil, but I just ordered the 8 just out of curiosity to see how they would look. If these were like 3D eyes, I might not actually put down some UV, but just because these 3D eyes might not stick as well as I'm hoping they're gonna, and just to toughen up some of that thread, I'm just gonna put down a little bit of this UV on there, and it's just gonna kind of enhance that nose a little bit. But this is as good as I can do. AI is a little bit better at designing flies than I am, apparently. It's a beautiful fly, colors I can't match. If you want this fly, like and subscribe, drop a comment below. I'm going to randomly kind of scroll through and see. I think there's a generator that I can do to kind of randomly pick someone to send this to. Find my email in the description of the channel. Send me an email. I'll send you this fly. Nice little castable fly. It'll be in your tackle box before you know it. Junior's Fishing Company. See you in the next one.